Ayubowan everyone. Welcome to the Iron Bloods Institute. This is the fifth episode of the series, Our Elites Just Suck. This is the series where we explain why our current elites suck and are so bad at doing their job. Since they suck so bad, we now include step-by-step guides on how they should be doing their jobs to get Sri Lanka out of this mess. In the last video, we laid out a broad overview of a plan for Sri Lanka to get out of this economic mess. We ended by stating what we need to use the bridge financing for. So, let's continue from that point on. The next step would be to use our diplomatic skills, play nice with China, and use some of the money from our bridge financing to get several small modular reactors, also known as SMRs, for our own use. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, SMRs are nuclear reactors that are physically smaller, factory manufacturable, and use nuclear fission to generate about 300 megawatts of energy. So what are the advantages of SMRs? SMRs have a lower powered core compared to conventional fission reactors, at least, are compact in size, and the likelihood that they would suffer a nuclear meltdown incident is near zero. Since they're fabricated in factories, the costs are lower, quality is higher, and the time taken to get one up and running is much shorter. However, for Sri Lanka, the two most important factors are that the possibility of a nuclear incident with these are near zero, and the fact that they can be fixed in isolated economic regions so that the stress on the grid and high tension lines is low. High energy industries can obtain power locally without having to rely on inverters, etc. So why do we approach China for these reactors instead of any other manufacturer in the world? Simply because, according to sources like the International Energy Agency, over 87% of the latest technology related to nuclear energy is held by Chinese and Russian firms. Firms in the West have long since lost their competitive advantage. Further, China dominates the nuclear supply chain and has a policy to export these components to any buyers willing to purchase the technology. Last but not least, all of China's SMRs are approved by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which means it is commercially viable and challenges all other designs on the market right now. Obtaining this is a matter of diplomacy, and no party, whether it be India or the USA, should be allowed to interfere, as this is in our national interest. So why are SMRs so vital to Sri Lanka? In the last video, we saw that this is what our energy imports look like. Further, in terms of domestic household energy consumption, Sri Lankans rely more on firewood for their energy needs. It is the same with industries, and those that use the grid are comparatively small. This is a good indication that Sri Lanka had barely industrialized. SMRs are so important because they are the cornerstone of tackling the energy needs shown in the chart. The import of thermal oil and coal for the purpose of grid energy generation becomes essentially zero, as the energy will be generated within Sri Lanka itself. Not only does this mean that the current grid consumption becomes cost effective, it also means that as energy becomes cheaper, more energy intensive industries can be started in Sri Lanka. This also means the dependence of biomass becomes close to zero in the long run, because with electricity being so cheap, there would be no need for it. It also has the potential to at least partially address the auto diesel and petrol dependency of our transportation sector. How, you may ask? By using a rather electrifying solution. Yes, the idea is to use trams. From the late 1901 to the 1950s, the idea of trams gained popularity. Diesel is used primarily by trucks and lorries, which are the backbone of Sri Lanka's logistical infrastructure. Instead of using petrol, diesel, or some sort of expensive liquefied energy source, the SMRs will enable us to use cheap grid electricity for our transportation needs. This even includes passenger transport. Even if the ideal scenario where the SMRs don't materialize, it is far cheaper as a nation to use coal instead of diesel or petrol. Trams are famous even in many cities in India and are widely used to transport both people and cargo throughout different countries. This recommendation is nothing new, and even in Sri Lanka, trams were commonplace in the past. The Ceylon Planter Society was involved in the financing and influencing the establishment of the tramways in Colombo. Colombo Electric Lighting and Tramways Company Limited was a British company represented in Ceylon by the Boosted brothers. The tramways were ready for operation by 1899-1900. Due to A.E. Gunasinghe's tramcar strike in 1929, the company lost interest in expanding the network or maintaining the system. The decrepit system was sold to the Colombo Municipal Council in 1943, and the Tramways Department operated the system until the 1960s. Around 1953, it was decided to phase out trams and replace them with electric trolley buses. The service was discontinued in 1964, and the reasons cited were trolley bus strikes, the maintenance cost, and the government policy decision. It would seem that the Colombo Municipal Council didn't have much interest in continuing this operation, and much of the tracks and vehicles were later sold for scrap. A.Y.S. Jnanam, founder of the St. Anthony's Group and progenitor of the vast Jnanam media empire, bought this metal and sold it for huge profits. Why can't engineers get electrocuted? Because they are not the conductor. Looking 5 to 10 years down the line to when Sri Lanka industrializes, we need to be ready for the huge energy demand cooling takes. As of now, the number of people in Sri Lanka that uses the electric grid for anything related to heating, let alone refrigeration, is minuscule. However, as time goes on, the demand for refrigeration will increase, just like it did in all other countries. It has become so bad that air conditioning and refrigeration has become the biggest cause of increase in electricity demand in the world. As time goes on, cooling will become a major component of energy draw, as you can see in the charts here. In general, tropical countries consume far more on cooling, and pictured here are the energy used for cooling for regions with similar sizes and climates as ours, specifically Hong Kong and Singapore. This is the energy used for cooling in industrial and commercial uses in Hong Kong, and this is the energy used for homes in Singapore. You can find out more by following the links in the description. So this begs the question, how do we tackle this issue? Our first option is to go higher tech, although that term is rather subjective. This company makes and sells thermoacoustic coolers which uses the Stirling cycle, popularly used in submarines to produce cooling. You can learn more about how this is done by clicking this link or the one in the description. Our second option is to go old school, and that is to use absorption refrigerators. Unlike many of the refrigerators that you find commonplace in most households, which use a compressor and a vapor compression refrigeration cycle or a VCRC, absorption refrigerators use a heating element and thus vapor absorption refrigeration cycle or VARC. These are the major advantages and disadvantages of these cycles, but what interests us are these two aspects of the VARC. The fact that it has a lower initial and operating cost is the most important factor for a non-industrialized nation like ours. The fact that it has no moving parts and thus the potential for failure being so low is just a bonus. So the first alternative and the most preferred one in my informed opinion are firewood refrigerators. Essentially, VARC refrigerators using biomass as the heating element. This is a company in India making these devices, and you can click here or check the description to see it in action. The second alternative is VARC refrigerators that use natural gas in the heating element. These are common among the Amish community in the USA and in countries where natural gas and natural gas infrastructure is widely available. And finally, the third is propane VARC refrigerators. These are also commonplace amongst the Amish, but are also commonplace in caravans and mobile homes around the world. Having said all this, crude dependence will always be a factor, especially in the short term. Sri Lanka and humanity as a whole is not ready to move on from these fuels yet. As such, the next step for us would be to negotiate with friendly nations like Russia and Iran to get a steady supply of cheap crude. This includes all crude derivative products of our imports, and the final goal should be to ultimately manufacture these finished products and energy-intensive products on Sri Lankan soil. Why Russia and Iran? Because Sri Lanka already has good established diplomatic relationships with these nations, and because as a bonus, Russia and Iran will be instrumental when we need to purchase enriched uranium for our SMRs. This should be taken forward as this is an existential issue for Sri Lanka. All oppositions to these projects should be met with derision and disdain. Local opposition for a move like this that can uplift all Sri Lankans as a whole should be shot down with extreme prejudice. I think in the last few videos I hammered in the abysmal state of Sri Lanka's only refinery in Sapugaskanda. All issues causing this closure need to be dealt with sharply and effectively. New FDIs for PPP refineries that at least supply local demand should be of utmost priority. This would mean the value addition is done on Sri Lankan soil, reducing the energy import bill by at least 60%. Even finished goods, which are used as inputs for major local industries like plastics, rubbers, and organic chemicals, need to be manufactured here. This image of the crude supply chain helps us understand and visualize the task of refinery value addition in Sri Lanka. Perhaps we won't be able to match Singapore's world-class refinery might, but at least we can establish entire industries which are profitable based on these refined products, with the profits circulating within our own economy instead of being exported abroad. A national strategy, like the one pictured here, used in Osaka, Japan, needs to be implemented for the short-term and long-term goals. That's the end of the 4th episode of the series, Our Elites Just Suck. The next episodes will continue explaining these solutions. If you found it informative, please like and subscribe to make the algorithm gods happy. Share this video with your friends and leave me a comment if I've made any errors or if you just want to say hi. Thanks for watching.